Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. We're going to go ahead and get started here. Uh, Thanks for joining us today for our debt management webinar. My name is Allie Smith. I am Assistant Director of Financial Counseling here at Penn State's Sokolov-Miller Family Financial and Life Skills Center. Holly Deemer, okay, I do see her. I need to promote her. Holly Deemer is also here with me today. She is one of our wonderful financial literacy ambassadors, and she'll be in the chat posting some links and helpful resources in there throughout today's webinar. Throughout the webinar, as you have questions or if you have questions, you can ask them in the chat or in the Q&A. Holly and I will both be looking at the chat and we'll check out the Q&A at the end. The Q&A feature does allow you to ask questions anonymously. I know debt management can be a sensitive subject, so if you've got questions that you would like to ask anonymously, please use that Q&A. If you happen to be attending from SMEAL's Ethical Leadership Challenge, we are still partnering with them, but we're no longer doing those QR codes at the end of the session. So we just work with a point person for that program to share the attendance report for each webinar. So rest assured, if you are tuning in from the SMEAL Ethical Leadership Challenge, you'll still receive credit for attending today. Lastly, this webinar is being recorded. I'm sure you heard that when you tuned in, and you can find recordings of all of our past sessions on our YouTube page, which is at it's at Finlit PSU. That's our YouTube handle. Okay, so I think those are all of our housekeeping items here. I will just say I got a chance to look at the attendance report this morning, and it looks like we have a good amount of undergraduate students and staff attending today, which is exciting. We also have some graduate students, faculty, and community members attending. And I did also notice that we have great representation from our campuses. So thank you everyone for tuning in today. We're so excited to have you. Like I said, today we are talking debt management, and according to recent data, it really looks like Americans have more debt than ever. So this is a timely topic. We're going to explore different ways that you can address and get rid of debt today. So I hope you get some value out of today's webinar and walk away with some direction on how you might manage any debt that you do have. Our goal here at the center, and really the why behind everything that we do, is to help you understand and take control of your finances, or really to empower you to be financially well. Folks who are struggling with debt might feel a sense of worry or anxiety or emotional tension related to money, which really is the opposite of financial wellness. But as we talk about financial wellness, it's important to note that financial wellness is not just determined by your income, your net worth, or your credit score. These factors can definitely play a role, but there are also plenty of folks who make large incomes or have great credit scores that do struggle financially. So according to the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, financial wellness is this. It's having control over your day-to-day, month-to-month finances and being able to have the freedom to make choices to enjoy everyday life in the future. In the present, I'm sorry. So having control over your day-to-day, month-to-month finances and having the freedom to make those choices to allow you to enjoy everyday life in the present, and having the capacity to absorb financial shock and being on track to meet your financial goals in the future. So financial wellness as a whole is really having the ability to balance all of these things: present and future financial security, and also freedom of choice. Outside of these things cited by the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, from my experience in working with lots of different folks through our one-on-one coaching program, I have also had the opportunity to see how being financially well can really affect people's lives in a positive way. So, being financially well seems to give people less stress in their lives. Feeling beat down by money or overwhelmed by your financial situation can definitely cause a lot of stress. So, having your finances in good order can help alleviate that. I've also found that being financially well also gives people the ability to make decisions that serve them. Like they're no longer tied to things that aren't serving them because they have to be because of money. So think of like a toxic job environment or even like a toxic relationship. Being financially well really allows you to make choices that serve you without money kind of clouding or solely guiding your decisions. Financial wellness also brings a sense of personal empowerment and independence, and we get to see that a lot through our one-on-one coaching program. So these really are all good things and things that I personally want for everyone. It's really why I and we at the center do this work that we do. And as we talk about financial wellness and debt management, I also just want to note, no matter if you make $40,000 a year or $200,000 a year, financial wellness is important and achievable. Like I said, there are plenty of folks who make larger incomes that struggle financially, and also folks who make modest incomes who are financially well and secure. So this is doable. At the center, we approach financial wellness as a whole within a ladder framework. So currently, I am 7 months pregnant, so I am not climbing any ladders right now, but I do know two things to be true about climbing a ladder from previous experience. First, a stable base is really important when we're climbing our ladder, and we also want to take our ladder steps one rung at a time. Our financial wellness ladder is no different than any regular ladder that you might climb. So, in our financial wellness ladder, our budget is our stable base and our foundation in financial literacy. Your budget provides structure around your money and can help you achieve your financial goals. Once you've got a solid budget that works for you and a system that's serving you, creating an emergency fund is a good next step, and that's the next rung on the ladder. An emergency fund should be at least 3 months of your expenses. And then the third step, and really where we're focusing our conversation today, is considering your debt. So you might have debt from student loans, a vehicle, a mortgage, a credit card, or something else. And banks, credit card companies, the government, and even our friends, whomever we borrow from, they all expect that we will repay them the money they've loaned us. And while our friends or family might be a little more forgiving if we don't repay them right away, places like banks and credit card companies and the government, not as much. So that said, it's important that if you owe money, you also have a debt repayment strategy. This means that you know how much you owe, who you owe it to, how much it's costing you in interest, all of your options for repayment, and that your budget accounts for those payments. When we fail to repay our debt on time, according to the agreement that we have in place, our financial reputation can take a hit. And so this means our credit score will drop, which can make it more difficult to borrow money in the future, find housing, or even get a job, especially for folks looking to work in the financial sector in the future or who will need strict clearances in their line of work in the future. So before we dive into the nitty-gritty of debt management here, I really just want to take a moment to acknowledge the toll that having debt can take on one's mental health. I did some research, and according to a recent survey from Forbes, 54% of respondents shared that they always or often feel stressed by their debt circumstances, and another 32% said they sometimes feel stressed because of their debt. So that's a big chunk of respondents there who are always, often, or sometimes stressed because of debt. And as a result of debt-related stress, 48% of respondents reported experiencing sleep difficulties, 40% noted an increase in anxiety levels, 38% reported a diminished social life, and 34% experienced depression. Oops, apologies. So this is significant. I mean, these responses make it clear that debt doesn't just affect our wallets, but it has a serious impact on our mental well-being, really making it more important to find ways to cope and seek help when needed. And I think these stats just go to show how closely tied our financial health and our mental health really are. Currently, American credit card debt is sitting at over $1 trillion, and it's once again the highest that it's ever been historically, which averages out to almost $8,000 per credit card holder, which is very significant. This Forbes article, Holly shared the link to the article if you want to take a look at that. This Forbes article shared some common reasons why we've found ourselves more and more tangled in debt these days. And over half, 55% of respondents cited economic circumstances as the principal factor driving them into debt. 48% of respondents attributed their debt to the pervasive influence of advertising and consumerism. And 42% identified difficulties in tracking and controlling their spending as a primary reason for their debt burden. So, having a plan to get out of debt or a debt repayment strategy can provide some light at the end of the tunnel and potentially help to isolate some of those negative feelings. We're going to dive into some tactical strategies to help reduce debt today, but it's also really important to address the why behind going into debt in the first place, and work to address those things or fix those behaviors. So before we dive into this like list of steps, make a list and learn about your options. I really want to talk a little bit about some of those things that folks in those articles cited as being their primary reason to go into debt, and just some ways that you might address like that why behind being in debt. So the first one that they shared was inflation or economic circumstances. And I mean, we know that items like food and housing are more expensive than ever. Personally, I've had to reorganize my budget multiple times over the last few years to account for those rising costs, increasing my food and transportation categories within my overall budget as necessary, and decreasing my fun budget to kind of keep things in balance. If I wasn't on top of my finances, I could have kept spending in the same way that I always have and ended up overspending because things are just more expensive. And as I talk with people about their finances, I think that's happening a lot right now. Things cost more, but people haven't changed their spending habits or reorganized their spending plans to account for these like increased costs. So in this case, I think I would encourage people to just sit down and take some time to lay everything out. So, like, how much do you bring in? What are your monthly expenses? And how much do you actually have left over to spend on fun things and wants? I think this exercise is really important. And of course, I do want to acknowledge for people who didn't have a lot of discretionary income to begin with before prices started going up, like students are a great example. Cutting back will be especially difficult. So that's important to acknowledge as well. The second thing that people cited was like advertising and this culture of consumerism that we live in. There are just so many things to want and spend our money on, and advertising is very, what's the word I'm looking for? It's very in your face without even realizing it. Like the amount of ads that we see in one day, gosh, I don't even know what that number is. It's very high everywhere we look, every time we look at our phone, right? Sometimes advertising does a really good job at making us feel like we need something, even if it really is just a want. or like this certain product is really going to change your life. And to help, gosh, excuse me, help combat the impulse spending, I'll call it, and work towards letting go of consuming so many things outside of our means and what we can truly afford. There are a lot of different things that you could try, different tactics you could implement. But one tip I'll share is to maybe implement an impulse spending rule. So if you're going to spend more than X amount on anything that you haven't planned to spend on, so like this is an impulse buy, delay the purchase. Force yourself to wait at least a day and then revisit. Ads are really good at making us feel like we need this thing and we need it now or we'll die. So for me, I'll share that's anything more than $50. So I do not impulse buy anything that costs more than $50. I force myself to wait a day so I can kind of think about it and come back to that decision without that sense of urgency. The third thing that they cited was just having some difficulties tracking spending. And for this, I would encourage everyone to build a budgeting habit. If you don't have a budget and some sort of system to track your spending, making certain that you're not spending more than you're earning each month, that is really a good place to start. Holly just posted some budgeting resources in the chat. It's a recording of our previous budgeting webinar and a link to our budget template. Our budgets are the base of our financial wellness ladder for good reason. So if you're struggling with debt and don't have a budget, please check out those resources and work on creating a budget for yourself. The recorded webinar will walk you through the process from start to finish of building a budget and share some good tools. An emergency fund is also really essential in helping prevent going into debt. So again, your emergency fund should be at least 3 months of your expenses. Okay. So after you've kind of contemplated the why behind being in debt in the first place, and you're putting steps into place to work on addressing those issues, whether that's creating a budget or implementing some sort of impulse spending rule or just laying out your finances, the first thing you've got to do, sorry, after you address the why behind being in debt, here are some of your first steps. So here's some things to think about as you consider or conquer your debt. The first thing you want to do is make a list of all the debt that you have and their associated interest rates. From there, it's important to learn about the options that you have for repaying each debt, like what repayment plans are available, or if you could consolidate or refinance to save some money, or if you maybe might need to take more drastic action. The third step is to adjust your budget if needed to begin making those required minimum payments. And then with any extra money that you have in your budget, you might want to prioritize variable or high interest debts. We're going to walk through each of these steps in more detail. So starting with step 1, which is to make a list, we need to know what we owe. And here we're just getting organized. So when someone schedules a debt management financial coaching session with me, this is usually the first thing that we do together. We sit down and we put it all on paper. This can be tough if this is something that has kind of been ignored and swept under the rug for some time. But facing it and getting a true understanding of the situation is the first thing that needs to be done. So here is important information to capture here on the screen. Creditor or who the debt is from, loan type, interest rate. Is there any sort of prepayment penalty? So really, will you get penalized for paying it off early? And for most debts, the answer for this is no, but it is important to look into that. The amount you owe in total, your minimum monthly payment, and due date each month if you want to include that as well. You can make an Excel sheet with this information, or maybe you use a journal. If you're not an Excel person, that's okay too. And like I said, this might be a tough thing to do, but you can't really tackle the unknown. So this is an important step in the process. This is step number one. If you're having trouble tracking it all down, your credit report will provide a snapshot of all the debts out there in your name. Your credit report contains the information that makes up your credit score. So your credit report will show you a history of your debt, how much has been repaid, and how much is still outstanding or how much is due, along with some other personal information like previous home addresses, any lawsuits maybe that you've been a part of, some employment history, and bankruptcy information. There are 3 credit reporting agencies that collect and report this information on consumers. You may have heard of them. They are Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion, and you can pull your credit report from any of these 3 sources. You used to be entitled to 1 free copy of your credit report from each credit reporting agency each year. So one from Experian, one from Equifax, one from TransUnion. But during the pandemic, the credit reporting agencies announced that they would temporarily make those reports available each week. And as of September 2023, that temporary program has been permanently expanded. So you now can access 1 free credit report from each of those credit reporting agencies each week. Gosh, excuse me, give me one second. So really, this means you have good access to the information in your credit report. If you go to annualcreditreport.com, you can pull a report there from whichever agency that you choose or all 3. And as you work to pay down debt, it's a good idea to pull a credit report to make sure that the information that you have in your files, on your Excel sheet or your journal, or however you're keeping track of your debt is accurate. And also the information on your credit report is accurate. If there's a mistake on your credit report, you can fix it by reaching out to that credit reporting agency directly. Okay, so let's get into some of the options for debt management here. There are different options for different situations depending on your level of debt. So options include consolidation, negotiation, repayment plans, settlement, and bankruptcy. It is important to note that debt settlement and bankruptcy will have a negative impact on your credit score and that they will stay on your credit report for 7 to 10 years. So let's dive into what each one of these are. Debt consolidation combines all your debts into one payment. So instead of making many payments, you would make just one payment. You can consolidate debt using a personal loan, a personal line of credit, a home equity loan, or a home equity line of credit. Federal student loans can also be consolidated, taking many federal loans and creating one new federal consolidation loan. If you consolidate federal student loans, your new interest rate will be the average of your old rates. Debt refinancing also falls into this category, this first blue bubble here. Folks will often refinance private student loans, for example, or mortgages to get better interest rates, which might allow them to pay off their loans more quickly and with less interest. It is important not to refinance federal student loans into private student loans because then those federal loans will lose their federal loan benefits. So just to make that clear. Next up in the line, we have debt negotiation. This is when you reach out to lenders to negotiate on your behalf. You might do this if you're in a situation where you can't make full payments on bills that you owe, and your creditors may be willing to work with you to find a solution that works well for both of you. They really would rather get some money from you than no money. And if you take this route, the first thing you'd want to do is really get organized and figure out what you can afford to pay towards each debt before you call each creditor. And then you'll want to call and explain why you can't afford your regular payments and let them know what you can pay. So here you're asking if it's possible to change the terms of your repayment to an amount that you can afford. This could look like extending repayment length so that your payments are lower, lowering your interest rate, or even in certain circumstances, the lender might be willing to accept less than the total amount that you owe. But before you agree to anything, make sure you fully understand the repercussions if they do settle for a lower balance, because this likely will show up on your credit report and negatively impact your credit score. So if you are negotiating with your lenders, before you agree to anything, just make sure you're understanding fully any repercussions to your credit score that the terms of the negotiation could have. The negotiation process may take several phone calls before you come to an agreement with your creditors, and they're really not obligated to accept anything that you're proposing to them. A debt management plan typically allows for some restructuring of debt. So these plans are overseen by a credit counseling agency, which negotiates with your creditors on your behalf to create new payment plans. Getting on a debt management plan can make it easier to afford your debt payments and avoid the negative impacts of defaulting on loans or credit cards or declaring bankruptcy. Debt management plans are a good step before settlement or bankruptcy because they won't directly affect your credit. You might enter into a repayment plan if you are delinquent on balances or you have certain accounts that are in collections. And if you're in this situation, contacting your lender or the collections agency and setting up a payment plan that you can afford will likely allow you to get out of delinquency. If you've not paid for a while on these debts, this can be a way to kind of ease back in and reestablish trust with the lender. Okay, moving on. Under a debt settlement program, the lender agrees to accept less than you owe on your debt, and this process usually it's longer term. It takes about 3 to 5 years to complete, as you'd have to save up the money to offer the creditor a portion of what you owe, like your overall total balance. This should be a last resort before bankruptcy, as it will affect your credit for 7 to 10 years. And then, of course, bankruptcy should be the last resort as it badly affects your financial reputation and your credit score. So you really want to consider all other options before you go this route. Bankruptcy can be done in, bankruptcy can be filed as liquidation, which is Chapter 7, or reorganization, which is Chapter 13. And they both kind of work in different ways. But student loans are not typically dismissible by bankruptcy. So even if you do end up going this route, you'd still need to have some sort of plan to keep yourself in good standing on your student loan payments. The good news, though, is that there are lots of options when it comes to federal student loan repayment. So there are really two different types of payment plans for federal student loans. There are year-based plans where you pay off your loans in a certain number of years, and income-based plans where the amount that you pay is based on your income. Under the year-based plans, you'll pay off your loans in a set number of years. The standard plan is what everyone is automatically placed into if they don't make a decision for their repayment plan. Under this plan, you'd pay your loans over the course of 10 years with equal monthly payments each month. There are a few other options in the, I want to pay off my loans in a set number of years category. So there's also the graduated plan. Under the graduated plan, you also pay off your loans in 10 years, but you start with a lower payment and go up to a higher payment with steps up every 2 years. This is kind of with the expectation that you won't make as much directly out of school as you will later on in your career. There's also the extended standard and the extended graduated plans, and they have the same concept, but instead of 10-year repayment schedules, they have 25-year repayment schedules. And to qualify for the extended versions of these plans, you have to have more than $30,000 outstanding in loans. There are also income-driven repayment plans, which base payments on your income instead of your total loan balance. Now, there are some recent changes and things happening within the income-driven repayment plans right now. And without getting too in the weeds, I'll just share a few things about these. Um, so know that the income-based repayment plan, or IBR, which we have highlighted in yellow, is currently open and working and can be enrolled into. It caps your payments at either 10 or 15% of your discretionary income, depending on when you took those loans out. The pay as you earn or pay plan is not accepting new enrollees as of July 1st this year. If you had previously been in that one and you had been enrolled before July 1st, you could stay in that no problem, but they are not accepting new folks into that plan. Income contingent repayment, or ICR, is really only for Parent Plus loans that have been consolidated, and no other types of loans can be enrolled into this plan again as of July 1st of this year. And then on the top of this category, we have the Saving on a Valuable Education, or SAVE plan. You may have heard some buzz around the SAVE plan lately. Basically, what's going on is that state courts have blocked the SAVE repayment plan. And because of this, everyone who was enrolled in the SAVE plan has been placed into an administrative forbearance. During this time, payments are not required and interest will not accrue on loans enrolled into the SAVE plan. There's really currently no timeline for how long this forbearance may last. It's just until they get things sorted out in the courts. So you actually can still enroll into the SAVE plan right now. You would just be placed on that forbearance where no payments are required and no interest is accruing. But it's important to note that time spent in the SAVE plan during this forbearance period won't count towards public service loan forgiveness or other loan forgiveness programs. Holly put more information, links with more information on all of these income-driven plans and also what's going on with the SAVE plan in the chat if you want to check that out. But hopefully this portion of this was not too in the weeds, just really sharing some information on federal student loan repayment plans, since they are a piece of many of our overall debt management picture. Okay, so moving on to step 3 of this process. As a reminder, step 1 was to get organized, lay out all of your info in an Excel sheet or a journal, or in some way, you got to lay it out. Step 2 is to learn about your options for repayment. And now we're on to step 3, which is to adjust your budget to begin making your minimum payments. So your budget really might end up feeling like a puzzle. You'll be fitting in these minimum monthly payments along with your other financial obligations like food and housing and healthcare, etc., all the things that you're paying for. You want to make a monthly plan for your money that includes your income and really everything that you need to pay for, including those debt payments. A good budget is two things. It has two components. It is the plan for your money, and it's also a tool to help you keep track of your spending to achieve this plan that you've set for yourself. The budget template that Holly shared earlier in the chat is a really great tool. So we do encourage you to check that out, but there are also plenty of apps out there that can help you budget as well. You Need a Budget is one that a lot of people seem to like, and it is a paid app, but you can get a year free if you sign up with your Penn State email. Really, the important thing here is that you've got a way to set your financial plan and track your spending to align with that plan. So you want to find some sort of tool that you like that allows you to do this. I will say If you are into infotainment, there are a lot of YouTube channels out there dedicated to either helping people get out of debt by helping them kind of like work through their financial plan, or, folks documenting their own journeys to get out of debt. So, if it could be helpful to see what other folks are doing and know that you're not alone in this, I would definitely encourage you to check out some different resources on YouTube, um, if that's helpful. If you are navigating high interest debt like credit card debt, it's a good idea to cut back on non-essentials in your budget and use any extra money that you can find in your budget to aggressively pay down the debt. As long as you have an emergency fund established, generally it's a good idea if you don't have any emergency fund to work on creating a small emergency fund before really focusing on aggressive debt payment. But the more quickly you pay your debt down, the less you'll pay in interest over time. So here we have a quick video that explains what you can do with extra money that you have to pay down your debt. There are two different strategies. There's the snowball and the avalanche method, and this video will explain really well the difference.
Credit card debt. So let's get started. While there are many ways you can attack your debt, there are two schools of thought in particular that we'll discuss here. The first is commonly referred to as the snowball method. It's when you pay off your debts by balance, the lowest first. Another tried and true method is to pay your debts according to their interest rates, starting with the highest rates first. For this discussion, let's call it the high rate method. So how do these strategies actually work? Let's start with the snowball method. First, make a list of all of your credit card balances from lowest amount to highest. If two balances are similar, prioritize the card with the higher interest rate. When you pay your monthly bills, make the minimum payment due for all of your debts. Then take any additional money you have available and put it toward the debt with the smallest balance. Do this each month until you've paid off your smallest debt. When you pay it off, don't use that account again until your debt is cleared up. Whether you hide the card in a drawer, freeze the card in a block of ice, or close the account, the point is to stop increasing your debt. The next step is to take the money you are paying toward that bill and apply it to the next smallest balance on your list. And as you continue moving down your list, the amount you're able to pay to each balance continues to grow and grow, creating, wait for it, a snowball effect. You might be amazed how quickly that can happen. Now let's talk about the high rate method. Again, make a list of all your debts, but instead arrange them according to their interest rates, with the highest interest rate first. Using this method, you'll also pay the minimum amount due across the board. Then, you'd focus on sending as much as you can afford to the account with the highest interest rate. Keep doing that until it's paid off. Once your balance is zero, concentrate on the card with the next highest rate on your list, and so on. Either of these methods can be a great way to get yourself out of debt, and while both methods have their supporters, it's really up to you to decide what works best. Supporters of the snowball method say that you'll feel a boost each time you pay off an account, and those small victories keep you motivated to reach your goal. In fact, a study published in the Journal of Marketing Research says that the act of closing accounts after they're paid off, regardless of size, is a better predictor of whether you'll get out of debt in the long run. On the other hand, supporters of the high rate method will tell you that over time, you'll save much more money and get out of debt sooner by paying off your higher interest rate debts first. What's right for you? Well, it's a personal choice. But if you want to get out of debt paying as little as possible, it's probably a savvier decision to use the high rate method, because you'll get rid of your most expensive debt sooner and pay less over the long run. But if you're the type of person who has trouble sticking to a plan, or if you need constant motivation, then the snowball method might be a better fit for you.
Okay, so they were just saying the snowball method might be a better fit for you if you feel like you might need those small wins along the way. So hopefully that video was helpful in explaining how you can maximize your debt payoff with either the snowball method or the avalanche approach. And Holly did link that entire video in the chat if you want to like save that and rewatch it if it could be helpful.
Credit card debt. So let's get started.
So that was the end of our official content here today. I know that was a lot of information in kind of a short period of time. So I just want to say, like, we are also here to help as we start to wrap up here and move into questions. We just want to plug our services as always and ways that we can support you in achieving your financial goals. Oh gosh, excuse me. All of our services are free and open to all Penn State students. So we offer one-on-one financial coaching appointments. That is the kind of area that I lead at the center. Current students can schedule those appointments through Starfish. These appointments really provide a confidential space for students to discuss their unique financial challenges, receive personalized education around money management, and work towards their financial goals. Staff members like myself and other staff members at the center and financial literacy ambassadors offer these appointments in person or via Zoom. We do also we don't we don't offer financial coaching to staff and faculty, but we are partnered with PNC and they do offer financial coaching. So if you are a staff or faculty member and are maybe interested in financial coaching, you can reach out to us and we'll get you connected with our partners at PNC for that. We do also offer group presentations and webinars for our classes, student organizations, and other groups. We've got our self-study modules in Canvas on a variety of topics, and those are open to the public, so anyone can go in and use those self-study modules. They're really a great resource. Holly did link our debt management self-study module there in the chat if that would be helpful. And our newest kind of offering here is our financial wellness bookshelf. So we have a bookshelf here at our office in the Grange building at University Park. And each campus actually has its own financial wellness bookshelf. So here on our bookshelves, we've got a variety of different financial literacy books on a variety of different topics. And if you want to come and check it out and take a book, it is free. Once you're done reading that book, you can bring it back to the bookshelf for someone else to take, or you can pass it off to a friend who you think might benefit from reading that, or you could keep the book also. This is really just another way for us to increase financial literacy in the community and connect folks with resources. You can get more information about all of our services on our website, which is financialliteracy.psu.edu, or you can scan that QR code there.